So this is the 30th Singapore Open Round 2. My opponent is another Chinese player. Chinatianshi should be a good game. Starting with black, so I'll just go ahead to play my favorite starting position to e6. So over here he's played a perpendicular. I'll go ahead with the rose variation, looking to play a shaman opening. So let's see whether we get that. Yep. So I'll play to c6, starting off with a shaman opening. So this particular diagonal cut variation is actually a pretty strong counter for shaman opening, which is also the counter that was used by the Japanese against me in the previous World Championship. I'll just go ahead with my usual variation to actually e7 over here. So the book move would actually best move would be to play d3, which is somewhat counterintuitive for most players. Yep. So he didn't really get that. So instead he went for a horizontal cross back. So I'll go for a vertical cross back into the center and just try to get this particular d3 disc so that I can get access into f5. So he's gone on to actually just prevent that move by playing this c2 move to flip this away. I don't have this access anymore. So there are two ways essentially that I can recapture that access, is to either go this way to d2 or c3. So d2 is actually a way to actually just cut across and get back this, but almost immediately I would expect if I were to play d2, he would just jump into c3 and just recapture this disc. So that would be a slight problem. So probably slight preference to actually play c3 in terms of trying to capture this disc and creating that access. But if I were to go into c3, he could potentially just go for the simple quiet move to e2. Another alternative is I could just do a horizontal cut across to g4 and expect him to jump into the center. I'll go ahead with c3 to actually just create access and probably anticipating a response from him over here to e2. But the way that I've cut across actually solidifies somewhat for this move, this disc to d3, and creates back that access to the center. Okay, so let's just go ahead and grab that access back. So the benefits of the shaman opening is actually just most of the time the mid game usually leads to a position whereby I get to actually occupy the center, which results in more moves that are more intuitive per se. So over here we want to actually look at this gap, these two gaps over here. If I were to jump in, he would just simply cross back. The ideal way probably would be to gain tempo by trying to play some move over to the right and create back that access into the cross back into d2. Or just entirely ignore the tempo and just go for the top and just try to build the edge on the top. So few options over here. I would actually prefer to play c1, just a bit of a variation, and just trying to maintain the shape across and probably expect a move perhaps to over here. Or I could just break to the right on the wall. So I'll go ahead with c1, just keeping to my side. On the left, it's a bit of a tug of war between both players. So while I'm trying to lure white to the left, he's trying to keep to his side on the right and hopefully create more moves for him. But yeah, let's see how that move, how this game plays out. So he's basically establishing himself on the right and me on the left at this point in time. So the two pockets of spaces that I would actually take note here and try to create access to would be this d2 or d7, which I can correspondingly play either g5 or g4 to actually capture or attempt to capture those spaces. Another alternative I could play is to just simply capture the edge to the top and just play f1. But the disadvantages of actually establishing an edge early on would be that I might potentially poison all my moves to the right. If Imagine if this was connected with a white disc, this wouldn't be a clean cut horizontal cut across, but rather I would involve flipping 3 discs along the diagonal as well. So that's probably something I want to avoid. So instead of creating the edge to the top quickly, I want to actually just first play out the centralizing moves to the right. So I don't really see much of a difference, or at least I can't tell between G4 and G5. Um, I actually have a slight preference to try to get into D7 instead of D2, because if I play D2 by playing a diagonal cut, I create a move potentially to maybe F2. So let's go with G4 with the point disc, which is the last disc that I just played, pointing towards D7, because the disc usually that is before the point disc tends to be a little bit more vulnerable, because white would actually just choose to play either one of these moves to centralize and also just remove that disc. So the point disc is usually the one that actually remains, and therefore I play this as a point disc in order to create access to D7. So let's just go ahead with D7 at this point in time. So white has played to the right edge. No immediate concerns for me to play on the right because he doesn't really have any access. Instead, I could consider the approach to the top edge that we considered earlier now, because but perhaps I should play to the right first, because if I were to play to the top first, this that I create to the top would actually obstruct my moves to the right eventually. So if I were to move towards the right and feed the edges across, this would eventually disappear, and then I could just go to the top. If I were to play to the top, white doesn't necessarily have to remove this disc that I created. So just considering with that in mind, I would actually consider playing the move to G6 first, and then he will probably have to cover the right side instead of playing to the left. If he plays to the left, I could actually just jump in and feed that unbalanced edge. Okay, so he's defended the right side. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and poison the edge. The sequence that will follow will probably be him capturing the edge and probably me jumping in over here, potentially. But if I were to jump in, he would cut across into the center and split the disc into 2 moves. So if he were to play to the edge, I would probably have to feed the unbalanced edge first, followed by that cut back. Alternatively, I could just prevent moves on both ways by just playing maybe g3 and try to force him to play a more poison move. So definitely, if I were to cross here and he crosses back, it would definitely be bad for me. So I wouldn't want to do that. Instead, I would actually prefer to feed the unbalanced edge here first and just wait for his response. If he were to feed me the unbalanced edge, I would capture it. If he takes the unbalanced edge, I would then play g3 and prevent this quiet move from happening too soon. I cannot play this move first because if he crosses back, it will be bad for me. So, yep, let's go probably with g3, or alternatively, I could consider with f1. But f1 gives a simple c7, so let's go with g3 to prevent this from happening first. So white has somewhat established himself very strongly to the lower and the right edges. It's just trying to maintain some moves across to survive. A quiet move over here for white. Um, Again, I face the same issue about the free move. If I don't defend this, he actually gets a free move over here. And if I defend it, he crosses back, I'll still have to find access somewhere else. So currently it seems like quite a tight situation. We'll go ahead with the c7 move over here and just allow him to cross back first. So the good thing about this crossback is that it somewhat boxes out this particular black disc to e7, which might be advantageous for me in the future development if I were to attack an unbalanced edge to the top right. So at this point in time, I'll just choose to actually form a pair and see the development. He will probably play to b8, and I'm somewhat running out of moves at this point in time. Probably the only way I can do is to actually try to attack this unbalanced edge. So he's gone for the balance edge to the bottom. So over here, I want to play a squeezing move, which is a d1 to try to just squeeze him to the right, if possible. There is a danger over here of him going from the left and going for the diagonal control, which is somewhat of a risk, but almost seems like a risk that I would have to take at this point in time. So usually it's not very advisable to actually create a one square here, but it is useful for such moves to actually try to create confusion for the opponent, especially when I know that I'm actually in a losing position. So hopefully, yeah, if that could actually force a mistake out of my opponent, that would be good. Apparently he's taken the top. So So the plan over here was to actually, the reason why I chose D1 over E1 was to actually get into cave in so that I can play a diagonal cut move over here, which is usually responded by forcing the corner and taking the unbalanced edge. But if he were to do that, he would convert all of these discs except for this one to white, and I could potentially overcome parity in the future if he were forced to play white and black, and I would actually get this move. So this is a maneuver to try to actually capture tempo. In exchange, if he were to slot in over here, I could actually exchange for one corner and one entire edge for the second corner. So somewhat of a desperate attempt, but hopefully it yields somewhat useful results for me. So over here, he's either going to play G7 and X square, or he's going to break out to the left, which is probably most likely going to be B6 move, which I can anticipate a gap uh, response to G4. So he's played actually B5. So I'll just jump in for a quiet move since this entire diagonal row is white. Just jump in over here to B6 as a quiet move to sort of just go behind the group of this. And if white were to jump in over here, I would actually play a quiet move to A5 in response. If white were to take the top at B3, I could potentially respond to either probably A4 instead and just try to get both moves, A4 and B4, consecutive moves. At the same time, bearing in mind that I may not have parity, I want to also look at potential diagonal control maneuvers. So probably the target diagonal will be this that lead diagonal between C3 and F6. So yep, he's played that. I'll go ahead and respond with A4 in hopes of getting consecutive moves to B4 as well. If he were to play maybe A3, I could probably still go for B4 and take away these two discs, and while trying to maintain that diagonal control. If you were to play a quiet A6 in response, then maybe I could do a feat. So over here, I'll just go ahead to jump in to B4 as a consecutive tempo. It most seems that I'm actually running out of moves right now. Doesn't seem too comfortable for me, but probably the best bet that I have right now. So white has elected to just cut in. So his main purpose is actually to capture one disc over here to avoid diagonal control. But I can do a force feed to the corner, and hopefully force him to respond to a5, for which this will become white again, and I can do a diagonal control to b2. So this looks like probably the only option I've got at the moment. He could either force diagonal control access by playing over here to a2, or he could actually go for, yep, he goes for g7 to try to corner it. So over here, I've successfully managed to establish the top right corner with a gamble for parity, even though I was losing probably in the mid game. So over here, I just want to feed this black, white, black, and then just sort of corner his move white, black, and then he has no choice but to actually play this particular move to g1, and I would actually get the corner and also a swindle, essentially. So this is probably quite a lucky runaway game for me. So right now he's basically forced with not much of an option at this point in time. Yep, he basically gives me the corner, or this move that gives me the corner and the sweep. So either way, in terms of tempo, he's kind of lost out. I think probably he made some mistake, probably in his earlier move to b3. So just go ahead and grab that corner, capture this corner, and down to the right corner, and then he takes the c square, and I'll just sweep back the this. And yep, that's good game by chinatianshi. Wasted opportunity for him. I think he was easily in control of the game.